All his life, Scott has been aware of and attracted to computers. We had Commodore 64s and Amigas when he was an infant. In fact, once I was ignoring his efforts at getting my attention while I completed an article on a Commodore 64. That ended when he crawled over and turned off the power strip, wiping out 2 hours' work. I always wondered if he knew what he was doing, but surely not. He was only 7 months old. My mother pioneered computers in the Little Rock school, so her den was a gold mine for Scott, with Carmen Sandiego and Turtle Graphics with Logo. And when Glenn and I moved outside city limits, Scott told us we'd moved beyond civilization. He was not happy. No 7-Eleven, no neighborhood friend, and even worse, no fast internet. One day, after about a year, he came home and found me and said, "Mom, you know when we moved out here, I hated it. But now when I come through the door, I get this feeling like I'm home." Before I could enjoy this change of attitude, he added, "Because I'm just steps away from the computer and all my friends." Then during high school, Scott began his interest in animating for real. For one school project, he had to animate a leaf falling. He worked and worked day after day, but he couldn't get it right. Finally, he called me in and said, "Look, come look, Mom," and I watched. I was really impressed at how the leaf fluttered to the ground, and I complimented him on that. "No," he said, "I couldn't get its color right." Reaching over, he pulled an oak leaf from underneath a pile of papers and said, "Finally, I just gave up. I picked a leaf and scanned it. Did you know leaves are not just one color of green?" Maybe if he'd looked out his window more than into his monitor screen, Scott would have discovered that sooner. But the computer held so much of the world for him. And there's similarities with Kara and her keyboard, I suspect. There's a whole world formed by your creativity, both of you. And you can get lost in that world. And my hope is that your connection with the computer or the keyboard will always be secondary to your connection with friends and family, and most of all, to each other. Baby Scott had the right idea. Sometimes it's important to be present with one another. So I pray that your delight in each other will keep you enjoying the world outside your windows.
Not to say that Kara was a difficult child to raise, but she did present us with some unusual challenges. For example, it was very difficult to get anywhere quickly with Kara in tow. Walking down the sidewalk, a road, a trail was always slow going because she saw so many little things to stop and examine along the way. Her dad and I weren't the only ones who experienced this. I remember a particular time at a national park campground in Kentucky when my sister Carolyn, or Aunt Kiki as we all call her, had to volunteer to stay behind with 5-year-old Kara so the rest of us could manage to get down the camp road to the visitor center. Aunt Kiki was quite amused with Kara's need to move all the insects out of the camp road. I remember being a bit less amused at the time. Eventually, I learned to add at least 10 minutes to any planned outing to accommodate Kara, an adjustment that made both our lives a bit less stressful. I thought perhaps Kara had a particular affinity for the small because she was small. We were looking over all those little things. But now I think that instead of looking over the hidden and obscure, we habitually overlook them in the rush of daily life. And sometimes those observations are the source of inspiration about the nature of the world and our place in it. So my hope for both of you is that you will retain your ability to stop, note, and observe not only the world about you, but each other as well, to wonder, to be moved, to be inspired.
When Scott was 5 or 6, he came home from school and confided, "I played with the brown girl today." I could sense there was more to it, and sure enough, he asked, "Why do they call her black? Her skin's not black, it's brown." I was about to answer when he blurted out, "They were making fun of me because I played with her." Oh no, I thought, I want my kids to value each person as having equal worth and with unique God-given attributes, but not everyone thinks that way. I just wasn't prepared for racism and inclusiveness to butt heads on the kindergarten playground. But then Scott said, "Yep, they were making fun, but I don't care. I'll play with her even if she is a girl." But I've been so glad to see Scott's openness to people of all colors and kinds. In fact, I think that his kindness, or humanity you might call it, is as much his forte as computers. My hope, Scott and Kara, is that you will continue with compassion for others and will recognize not only your own talents, but the myriad giftedness God has given us in each other, whatever our gender or politics or persuasion.
When Kara's sister, Erin, was in junior high, she discovered how entertaining a tape recorder could be. She produced multiple recordings at that time, mostly of herself. However, when she could talk someone into it, she particularly liked to interview people. Kara was not a willing participant in this activity. But occasionally, Erin would coerce her into it. One of Erin's interviews with Kara, who was about 9 years old at the time, was particularly memorable. I don't remember the exact words, but it went something like this. Erin, what did you do at school today, Kara? Kara, I don't know, nothing. Erin, well, who did you eat lunch with? Kara, some people at a table. Erin, so what did you talk about? Kara, well, some people were teasing Liza about her nose. I didn't like that. Erin, what did you do? Kara, well, I just said, do I sense unkindness at this table? After which I believe Erin moved on to something else. I have to admit this story amazed me at the time. What a succinct, effective, and yet gentle way to make a point. I personally wouldn't have thought of it. So my hope is that you will always find ways to speak to others and to each other so that your message will be heard but will not hurt. I believe there is no better way to effect change and to make the world a better place.
I have a final short story from our time in Arkadelphia. We lived near DeGray Lake, and I would take the kids to the sandy beach there to swim. And once I unloaded 3 kids, all the towels, the chairs, the snacks, and the floats, only to find that the air pump was broken. So I sat down in the shade to cool off a moment before I started huffing and puffing and blowing air into the floats. Well, Scott was fiddling with the pump, and he toddled over and gave it to me. It wasn't put together the right way, but despite the fact that he was only 2, it worked. So may you always be able to fit things together in life, not just Scott, but Kara too. May you figure things out together and find ways to go on when things don't work out. Between you, there's so much talent and ingenuity. May you be blessed by each other's gifts and challenged to grow. Life can be so good when shared together. May it be so for you.
Kara and Rachel have been friends since they were both 3. Throughout the years, they built snow forts, defended the treehouse from imaginary enemies, and caught lots of salamanders and frogs. But perhaps their most unusual pastime involved their interest in language. Yes, not only did they make up their own language with its own alphabet, but they proceeded to write up original stories using this language. These stories went on for pages and pages. In fact, I think they intended to write an entire book, which, of course, only the 2 of them would be able to read. Kara read part of the story to me one time, but since I didn't know the language, it was totally incomprehensible. The sound of it was interesting, although puzzling in the extreme. I mention this because Kara so often did things in her youth that were a mystery to everyone in the family. She was, in fact, famous for ardently pursuing paths that the rest of us had trouble seeing the value in. And yet we couldn't help acknowledging that she was also one of the most unique individuals we'd ever encountered. And we continue to be amazed by what she and Scott have achieved so far. And so, my darlings, keep on with your dreams in spite of the naysayers. I fervently believe that you have it within yourselves to remain true to who you are. And I think who you are is phenomenal.
Home is sometimes a place, and it's sometimes an idea. But for Karen Scott, I think it is each other, and that is what this song is about, composed by Karen. You are a home to me, as the winds at home in the trees. You're my family. You make me happy when I feel alone and my dreams have been overthrown. I think back on my home. You can fulfill me, 'cause life's not always kind, and I know you feel it too. If only I could shield you from what darkness may haunt you. Let me be your home, so when you feel overthrown, don't endure alone. I will be